10:45 in the morning. Friday, the 20th of October 2017. Elizabeth, South Australia. The last VF Series 2 Commodore SSV Redline rolls off the General Assembly line at the Holden plant on Phillip Highway. Red hot paint, black roof, 6-litre V8, VIN ending 33542. The 7,687,675th Holden ever built on Australian soil. The Rainer Hoflion badge, chromed brass, the same design engraved in 1928, is bolted to the boot lid. 2 supervisors walk it forward, a camera flash. 950 workers applaud. Then silence. 69 years, 10 months, and 22 days after Ben Chifley pulled the first Holden 48-215 off the line at Fisherman's Bend on the 29th of November, 1948. Australian car manufacturing ends. If you ever pushed a Kingswood up the Hume at 3 in the morning, apprenticed on an Elizabeth line, or watched the last VF Commodore roll out of the paint shop in 2017, hit subscribe. This channel keeps these stories alive. Chapter 1. The Last Car. The workers on the line are quiet. They have known this moment was coming for 3 years, 10 months and 9 days, since General Motors announced on the 11th of December 2013 that Holden Elizabeth would close. They have watched the shift patterns thin. They have watched the apprentices leave. They have watched the supply chain firms, Autoliv, PBR, Bosch, Continental, close their gates one by one across South Australia. They have built the last Commodores, knowing every one was closer to the last. At 10:45 a.m. on Friday the 20th of October 2017, they hit it. Red-hot paint, black roof, 6-litre V8, 304 kilowatts, 6-speed automatic, VIN ending 33542. The badge on the boot is the same Rainer Hoflion, heraldic on a shield, holding a stone that has been on every Holden since 1928. 2 supervisors walk the car forward. A photographer's flash. The workers applaud. 950 people. In a plant that once employed 24,000 across Australia. The line stops. Executive Director of Manufacturing Richard Phillips speaks briefly. He says, "Our last car was our best." The workers file toward the buses. General Motors has hired the entire Adelaide Oval for a private concert by Jimmy Barnes. On one of those buses is a fitter named Stewart Underwood, 60 years old. He started at Holden Elizabeth on the 20th of October 1973. 44 years to the day, to the hour before. His father, a Manchester fitter and turner who arrived in South Australia in 1955 under the Playford government's British migration scheme, worked at GMH Woodville from arrival to retirement. Stewart followed him to Elizabeth, aged 16. He worked the Kingswood era, the Commodore era, the Lexend era, the VF Series 1 and 2. He has closed his locker for the last time. But this story does not begin at 10:45 a.m. on the 20th of October 2017. It begins 33 years and 4 months earlier in a Senate chamber in Canberra, when a Labor senator from Ballarat stood at the dispatch box and announced a plan. Chapter 2. The Boy from Ballarat. 30th of June 1932, Ballarat, Victoria. John Norman Button is born at his family home in the manse of St Andrew's Kirk. His father is the Reverend Clifford Norman Button, Presbyterian minister, moderator of the Presbyterian Church of Victoria. From 1941 to 1942, strict, distant. His mother is Dorothy Marion Button, née Grubb, schoolteacher. John is the second of 3 surviving children. 1946. 14-year-old John Button wins the Hume Robertson Scholarship to Geelong College, not Melbourne Grammar, as some accounts later got wrong, but Geelong College, on the shores of Corio Bay. He becomes editor of the school paper. He joins the debating club. 2 years later, On the 29th of November 1948, 16-year-old John Button is in the boarding house at Geelong College when the wireless carries Prime Minister Ben Chifley's speech at Fisherman's Bend, Port Melbourne. The first Australian mass-produced car, the Holden 48-215, is unveiled. Chifley, according to the Argus of the 30th of November, says 3 words at the podium: "She's a beauty." The country is euphoric. 16-year-old John Button, in his Geelong College dormitory, reads about it in the Argus the next morning. He is 5 months and 1 day short of his 17th birthday. Law at Ormond College, University of Melbourne. A clerkship at Maurice Blackburn and Company. A year at the University for Foreigners in Perugia, learning Italian. 1961. Button marries schoolteacher Marjorie Batten. 3 sons, James, David and Nick. 1982. Button's middle son, David, dies of a drug overdose, aged 19. It is the private grief that runs beneath every public act of his ministerial career. He is a founding member of the Participants, with John Cain, Barry Jones, Frank Costigan, Michael Duffy, the Victorian ALP reform group that moved the state branch from the left towards the centre. Button is not socialist left. Andrew Lee, in his peer-reviewed academic analysis of the Hawke government, explicitly groups Button with Hawke and Keating in the centre-right. 1974. Elected to the Senate for Victoria. 1977. Deputy Leader in the Senate. 1980. Leader. February 1983. It is Button himself who tells Bill Hayden, the Labor leader who cannot hold his caucus against Bob Hawke, that he must stand aside. 11th of March 1983. John Button is sworn in as Minister for Industry and Commerce in the new Hawke government. He is 50 years old. He will hold the portfolio, expanded to Industry, Technology and Commerce, in December 1984, for the next 10 years, the longest single portfolio tenure of the entire Hawke-Quaddy era. And on the 30th of May 1984, 36 years after the first Holden left Fisherman's Bend, 33 years before the last one would leave Elizabeth, John Button stood at the Senate dispatch box and announced the plan that would kill the industry Ben Chifley had launched. Chapter 3. Whitlam's Door, 18th of July, 1973, 7 o'clock in the evening. Prime Minister Gough Whitlam announces on national television that, effective midnight, all Australian import tariffs will be reduced by 25% across the board. The Australian passenger vehicle industry, built behind protectionist tariffs that had reached 60% on some categories, that had made Elizabeth possible, that had underwritten Holden's dominance from Chifley to Whitlam, faces global pricing for the first time since 1948. Between 1973 and 1980, Australian manufacturing employment falls by approximately 80,000 jobs. Read that again. 80,000 manufacturing jobs in 7 years, following a single cabinet decision announced at 7 in the evening on a Wednesday, effective at midnight. The tariff wall Menzies had built in 1949, the wall Chifley had committed to in 1948. The wall Playford had leveraged to bring Elizabeth to South Australia in 1958, reduced by a quarter in a single stroke. But here's the thing, Whitlam did not touch the car industry-specific tariff structure directly. The 25% cut applied across the board. The passenger vehicle tariff, a category-specific rate, remained at 57.5% throughout the Whitlam period. When Fraser took office in December 1975, that rate held. When Fraser lost office in March 1983, that rate still held. The trigger had been set. The door had been opened. Someone still had to walk through it. And on the 11th of March 1983, a new Labor government was sworn in, and the man who had walked through the door Whitlam had opened became Minister for Industry, Technology and Commerce. Chapter 4. 30 May 1984. The Senate Chamber, Canberra. Wednesday, the 30th of May 1984. Autumn. John Button stands at the dispatch box. He is 51 years old. He has been Minister for Industry for 1 year, 2 months. He announces the Motor Industry Development Plan, the pre-plan Australian passenger vehicle industry. Button reads the figures into Hansard. 5 manufacturers: General Motors Holden, Ford Australia, Toyota, Nissan and Mitsubishi. 13 models. A tariff on completely built-up imports of 57.5%. Import quotas restricting foreign vehicles to approximately 30,000 a year. Direct assembly employment, approximately 55,000. Combined with the supply chain, component makers, tool and die shops, seat and glass and wiring firms, dealer networks, approximately 200,000 jobs. The plan's targets, Button reads on: reduce the 5 manufacturers to 3 groups. Reduce the 13 models to 6, 3 pairs. Reduce the tariff from 57.5% to 42.5% in 1984, to 27.5% by 1988, to 15% by 1992. Increase import quotas from 30,000 vehicles annually to 175,000 by 1988, a 5.8-fold increase. The mechanism, a new Automotive Industry Authority, created by legislation the same year. The foundational document, Industries Assistance Commission, Report number 267, published 1981. Passenger Motor Vehicles and Components, post-1984 Assistance Arrangements, the technical case for tariff reduction over the 4 years preceding the plan. The plan is not written by Button alone. It is drafted by the Car Industry Council across 1983 in consultation with the manufacturers and the Vehicle Builders Employees Federation. But Button signs it. Button announces it. Button defends it in Hansard, in press conferences, in Cabinet and at manufacturer meetings across 1984 and 85. The plan carries Button's name in the trade press, at every worker demonstration in every subsequent history, because it is Button's plan. In June 1984, Button flies to Japan to inform the Japanese car makers of the new quota arrangements. He meets Toyota, Nissan and Mitsubishi executives at their Tokyo headquarters and outlines the pathway by which Japanese badged vehicles will double, then triple, their Australian market share across the coming decade. Meanwhile, in Elizabeth, on the day the plan is announced, Stewart Underwood is on the line. He is 27 years old. He has been at Holden for 10 years, 7 months and 10 days. He is working on the VH Commodore body assembly. Married. 2 young children, 12 years to run on the mortgage. He hears about the plan on the drive home. Radio 5AA. His wife has left dinner in the oven. But before the plan could kill the industry, the plan needed the industry to still exist. And the industry existed because of what 4 Australian car plants had done between 1940 and 1945. Chapter 5, I Am Work, May 1940, Melbourne. Prime Minister Robert Menzies appoints Essington Lewis, Managing Director of the Broken Hill Proprietary Company, as Director General of Munitions. Lewis is 59 years old, born the 13th of January 1881 in Burra, South Australia. He has led BHP since 1926. He is the most powerful industrialist in the country. On the wall of his office at Munitions headquarters in Melbourne, framed in block capitals, I Am Work, Lewis places every Australian car plant, every railway workshop, every heavy engineering firm on a war footing, contracts at actual cost plus a margin, usually 10%, no competitive tender, no negotiation. January 1942. Lewis's powers are extended. He is also Director General of Aircraft Production, running the new Department of Aircraft Production. He now controls both munitions and airframes for the whole Commonwealth War economy. The Australian car plants convert. Every one of them. General Motors Holden's Fisherman's Bend, Melbourne, under Managing Director Sir Lawrence Hartnett, who had co-founded the Commonwealth Aircraft Corporation with Lewis and W.S. Robinson in 1936. The plant switches to shell and bomb cases, airframe assemblies for the Beaufort and Beaufighter and Mosquito and Lancaster, aero engines, anti-tank guns and Bofors gun tractors, torpedoes, anti-submarine bombs, marine craft and military vehicle bodies. Gypsy Major aero engines are built at Fisherman's Bend for the de Havilland Tiger Moth, the RAAF's primary training aircraft. Allison Tariff 1710 engines are built at GMH plants under licence for the P-51 Mustang and P-40 Kitty Hawk. But here's the thing. The Bristol Beaufort, Australia's primary anti-shipping bomber and the mainstay of the RAAF's Pacific campaign, was originally specified with the Bristol Taurus engine, built in Bristol, England. Supply from Britain failed under blitz pressure. Australia switched the Beaufort's engine to the Pratt & Whitney R 1830 Twin Wasp, licence-built at a purpose-built factory in Lidcombe, New South Wales. And this is where it gets genuinely insane, per the historical record on the Bristol Beaufort in Australia, quoted verbatim from the DAP Correspondence Archive. Orders for the engine were placed and a factory was set up at Lidcombe, New South Wales, and run by General Motors Holden. Read that again. The engine that powered the Bristol Beaufort, the aircraft that defended Australia's northern approaches from the Imperial Japanese fleet, was built at Lidcombe in a factory run by General Motors Holden. GMH ran 2 aircraft engine plants during World War II. Gypsy Major at Fisherman's Bend for the Tiger Moth. Twin Wasp at Lidcombe for the Beaufort. The Beaufort airframe itself was assembled at DAP Fisherman's Bend and DAP Mascot. The wings and rear fuselages came from 4 subcontractors: Chullora Railway Workshops in Sydney, Newport, Railway Workshops in Melbourne, Islington Railway Workshops in Adelaide, and GMH Woodville in South Australia. More than 700 Australian-built Beauforts served with the RAAF between 1941 and 44. The first Australian-assembled Beaufort, A91, flew on the 5th of May 1941. The CAC Boomerang, Twin Wasp powered, first flew at Fisherman's Bend on the 29th of May 1942. GMH Woodville in Adelaide also built Beaufort airframes, wings for the Avro Lincoln, an armoured car body, anti-tank and anti-aircraft guns. In 1942, GMH photographers' records show employee Joyce Breeden assembling fighter aircraft on the Woodville shop floor. Ford Australia, Geelong. The Ford V8 powered the Universal Bren gun carrier, approximately 4,800 built between 1941 and 43. At Ford Homebush in Sydney, at the Victorian Railways, at the Melbourne Gas Works, at Assay Railways Islington and at State Engineering Works North Fremantle. Ford also ran the Rockley Engine Overhaul Facility in Queensland, rebuilding Twin Wasps for the Pacific War. Richards Industries Limited at Keswick and Mile End in Adelaide, the plant that Chrysler would buy in 1951 and that would open Tonsley Park in 1964. In World War II, the Richards Works built wing panels for the Beaufort and the CAC Wirraway. It was not yet Chrysler. International Harvester at North Shore Geelong opened 16 months before the war on the 22nd of May 1939. 2/3 of the site commandeered by the RAAF. IH Geelong assembled P-40E Kitty Hawks, Fairey battle target tugs and Boston bombers. The workforce grew from 150 in 1939 to 1,200 by 1941. Named World War II leaders of the Australian car plant war effort: Essington Lewis, Director General; Sir Lawrence Hartnett, GMH; Sir John Story, head of the DAP Beaufort Division; Daniel McVeigh, DAP Administrator, 6 years of war production. Women on the shop floor for the first time. Then, in 1946, Essington Lewis returned to BHP. In 1948, Lewis personally bought one of the first Holden 48 215s off the Fisherman's Bend line. The industrialist who had armed the country was the customer for the first product of the reconverted plants. If you've made it this far, you already know why these stories matter. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and if you have a photograph, a payslip, or a story from Elizabeth or Fisherman's Bend or Woodville, drop it in the comments. We keep the plants alive by keeping the names alive. Chapter 6. Fisherman's Bend, 29th of November 1948. Fisherman's Bend, Port Melbourne, the 29th of November 1948, a Monday in late spring. The same factory floor that had pressed Beaufort airframes 6 years earlier. The same tooling, the same overhead cranes, some of the same workers. Prime Minister Ben Chifley stands beside Sir Lawrence Hartnett, the man who had driven the 48-215 project through the war, though he had left GAMH 2 years earlier over Australian content disputes. A curtain drops. Behind it, a grey sedan with a Rainer Hoff lion on the boot lid. The Holden 48-215, the FX. 60 horsepower straight 6, monocoque body, column shift 3-speed, all Australian tooling. Priced at £733, approximately half the price of the imported American Ford or Chevrolet alternative. Chifley's speech, quoted verbatim in the Argus the following morning. She's a beauty. The nation orders 18,000 units in the first 6 weeks. Waiting lists stretch to 1952. Menzies wins office in December 1949. He continues the tariff protection Chifley had committed to. The Australian car industry is now sacrosanct, protected by 57.5% tariff walls that will hold for the next 24 years. September 1958. Premier Sir Thomas Playford of South Australia persuades GMH to build a second assembly plant at a new satellite city 30 kilometres north of Adelaide, named for the young Queen Elizabeth II, coronated 5 years earlier. Playford famously gives farmer Kevin Judd's land to GMH before the state technically owns it. Construction begins in May 1958. Managing Director Earl Daum pours the ceremonial concrete. The body hardware plant opens in 1960. The full body and vehicle assembly plant opens in 1962. The first vehicle off the Elizabeth line, the Holden EJ from July 1962, with the EH following a year later, the fastest-selling Holden of the early Lion era. The 21st of February 1963. Queen Elizabeth II tours the plant that bears her name. She watches an EJ body come off the paint line. Peak Elizabeth output, 240 bodies per day. A car a minute. The 1 millionth Holden is built in August 1962. The 5 millionth in August 1990. The national peak GMH workforce reaches approximately 24,000 across all sites. The Elizabeth workforce is heavily British migrant, the South Australian Housing Trust's Elizabethans, the Cheshire families, the Manchester tradesmen, the Yorkshire fitters, the Glaswegians who arrived under the same assisted passage scheme that had brought a 5-year-old Jimmy Barnes to Elizabeth in 1961. Stewart Underwood's father, one of those Manchester tradesmen, arrives in Adelaide in 1955 and takes a job at GMH Woodville. Stewart is born in South Australia in 1957. In 1973, aged 16, he follows his father through the Elizabeth Gate. But the tariff wall that built Elizabeth was already beginning to crack, and the man who would kill Elizabeth was already sitting in the Senate. Chapter 7. The Nova and the Corolla. 1985. The Motor Industry Development Plan takes effect. The passenger vehicle tariff falls from 57.5% to 42.5%. Import quotas begin to loosen. Japanese car makers, Toyota, Nissan, Honda, Mazda, Mitsubishi, expand their Australian dealer networks. Cheaper Japanese imports flood suburban showrooms. 1989. United Australian Automobile Industries, UAAI, launches. A joint venture between General Motors Holden and Toyota Australia. badge-engineered cars produced at each partner's plant under both brands. The Holden Apollo, a rebadged Toyota Camry, built at Toyota's Altona plant. The Holden Nova, a rebadged Toyota Corolla, also at Altona. The Toyota Lexen, a rebadged Holden Commodore, built at Elizabeth. The idea, per the Automotive Industry Authority's rationale, allow each manufacturer to compete across all segments while producing only their strongest models. The scale efficiencies would flow. The industry would consolidate. Here's the kicker. Per the historical record, Wikipedia's button car plan entry, drawing on ABS motor vehicle census data, the Toyota Corolla and Camry outsold the Holden Nova and Apollo 7-1. 7-1. The Corolla was the Nova. The Camry was the Apollo. The badge on the boot was Holden. The car underneath was the same car. Australian buyers chose the Toyota badge. The lion on the boot of the Holden Nova was still Rainer Hoff's 1928 design. The lion was still there. What it stood for was hollow. Stewart Underwood is now 32, on the Elizabeth line, building Commodores that Toyota will sell as Lexens. 1992, Nissan closes its Clayton, Victoria assembly plant. Full Australian manufacturing exit completed by 1994. First car maker gone. Approximately 2,500 jobs. 1996. UAAI is dissolved. The badge engineering experiment has failed. Lexen production ends in 1997. May 1988. Bob Hawke's economic statement, the largest general tariff cut since Whitlam's 1973 quarter. The passenger vehicle rate is placed on a new downward glide path. 12th of March, 1991. Treasurer Paul Keating's One Nation statement extends tariff cuts through to the year 2000. Verbatim. This statement completes the program announced in the Economic Statement of May 1988. 1997. Prime Minister John Howard freezes the passenger vehicle tariff at 15%. The target button had set 13 years earlier. Howard freezes it. He does not raise it. In 2000, 15%. In 2005, 10%. In 2010, 5%. The tariff, 60% in 1968, 57.5% in 1984, was by 2010 1/12 of its Menzies era peak, 2008. Mitsubishi closes Tonsley Park, the former Chrysler plant, the former Richards Industries factory, the former Beaufort wing panel plant. Second car maker gone. 1,000 jobs. And on the 23rd of May, 2013, Ford Australia announced it would close Broadmeadows. Toyota announced Altona's closure 8 months later. And Holden, the last one, announced Elizabeth's closure on the 11th of December 2013. 24 hours after the Treasurer of Australia stood in the House of Representatives and dared them to leave. Chapter 8. Either you are here or you are not. 10th of December 2013. The House of Representatives, Canberra. A matters of public importance debate on motor vehicle manufacturing. Treasurer Joe Hockey at the dispatch box. Holden Australia, under North American Chief Mike Devereaux, has been in negotiations with the Commonwealth for a further round of automotive assistance funding. Hockey rises. Hansard records his words verbatim. If I was running a business, and I was committed to that business in Australia, I would not be saying that I have not made any decision about Australia. Either you are here or you are not. He adds, there's a hell of a lot of industries in Australia that would love to get the assistance the motor vehicle industry gets. 24 hours later, the 11th of December 2013, General Motors Detroit announces that Holden Australian Assembly will end in 2017. 2,900 jobs to be lost from Elizabeth over 4 years. Prime Minister Tony Abbott's response, given at a Sydney press conference, a difficult day for Australia. The 2013 political line, delivered by Hockey, by Finance Minister Matthias Cormann, by Industry Minister Ian Macfarlane. Government support for the car industry is unaffordable. The counterline, total federal automotive assistance, is approximately $500 million a year. The Productivity Commission, the Coalition's own economic advisory body, publishes its analysis of the South Australian car-making employment multiplier. The figure, 4.4. For every 1,000 direct car maker jobs, 4,400 additional jobs across the supply chain, the dealer network, the tool and die shops across Playford City and Salisbury and Munno Para. Let that number sit for a moment, 4.4. Elizabeth's 2,900 direct jobs at that multiplier imply approximately 12,700 additional jobs in the South Australian supply chain. Stewart Underwood, aged 56, hears the announcement on the car radio, driving home to One Tree Hill. Dave DePares, a body shop worker who had started at Holden aged 17 in January 1988, tells the Adelaide Advertiser, "It is the end of an era for local manufacturing and it has been a big part of my life." The Cascade, 23rd of May 2013. Ford Australia announces exit. 11th of December 2013. GM announces Holden Elizabeth closure. 10th of February 2014. Toyota announces Altona closure. 3 of the world's 10 largest car makers, Ford, GM, Toyota, have committed to closing their Australian plants inside a 9-month window. All in response to Hockey's dispatch box challenge, and for 4 years, from December 2013 to October 2017, the Elizabeth workforce built cars they knew no one else would ever build. Every VF Commodore off that line, every SSV Redline, every Ute, every wagon, was a shift closer to the last. Chapter 9. The 4-Year Funeral. 2013 to 2017. Elizabeth's 4-year funeral. The workforce reduces from 2,900 to 950 through voluntary redundancies, natural attrition and staggered site closures. Elizabeth Metal Fabricators, Adelaide Engine Company, the Tonsley subcontractors who had served Elizabeth since the 1960s. All close between 2015 and 2017. Autoliv, the Swedish airbag manufacturer at Marston in Adelaide, closes in 2015. PBR International winds down 2016. Bosch Australia exits automotive supply 2016. Continental 2017. The 2005 VE Commodore, the last all-new Commodore designed and built in Australia, costing GMH more than $1 billion to develop, shared with GM's global Zeta platform, is refreshed to the VF Series 1 in 2013 and to the VF Series 2 in 2015. No successor is designed. The Elizabeth engineers are drawn down onto Chinese and Korean GM projects. 26th of September 2016, Ford Geelong engine closes. 7th of October, Ford Broadmeadows assembly closes. 650 jobs at Broadmeadows, 350 at Geelong. 3rd of October 2017, Toyota Altona closes. 2,600 direct jobs. In the Elizabeth Body Shop, on the 17th of October, 3 days before the official. Last car, Alex Kyriakopoulos, a paint line worker, watches VYN ending 33644 come through the last paint booth. He knows what he is looking at, the second-to-last VF Series 2 Commodore ever framed at Elizabeth. 3 days later, through a friend on the sales floor, he will buy that car for a price he refuses to disclose. There will be 2 last Holdens from Elizabeth. VIN 33542 of General Assembly late morning on the 19th of October, celebrated at the public ceremony on the 20th, is what General Motors officially describes to Car Sales magazine as absolutely the last Holden. VIN3 3644, the last body framed and painted, off the paint line on the 17th of October, later purchased by Kyriakopoulos, is what body shop workers will always call the real last one. Both cars exist. Both wear the Rainer Hoff Lion. Both are red-hot VI F Series 2 Commodore SS5 red lines. Stewart Underwood is now 60, 12 months from retirement, 24 months from the pension. He works his last shift on the 20th of October, 2017. At 10:45 a.m. on Friday the 20th of October 2017, the last VF series. Two Commodore SSV Redline crossed the line at Elizabeth, and the country that had armed itself with car plants in 1940 stopped making cars. Chapter 10. 10:45 a.m. 10:45 a.m. Friday, 20th of October 2017. Elizabeth, South Australia. The last VF series. Two Commodore SSV Redline crosses the last station of General Assembly. Red-hot paint, black roof, 6-litre V8. Vehicle identification number ending 33542. The 7,687,675th Holden ever built on Australian soil. 950 workers on the line that day. The remainder of the 2,900 phased out across 4 years. Stewart Underwood, 44 years to the day since he first walked through the Elizabeth Gate on the 20th of October 1973, closes his locker for the last time. Read that again. 44 years to the day. The workers board buses to Adelaide Oval. General Motors has hired the entire stadium for a private concert. Jimmy Barnes takes the stage, born in Glasgow. Arrived in Elizabeth in 1961 under the same British migration scheme that had brought Stewart Underwood's father to Woodville 6 years earlier. Solo career from 1984, the same year Button announced the plan. Barnes performs Working Class Man. His voice fills Adelaide Oval. The bass line is the same bass line that played across every Elizabeth shift break in the 1980s, on 5AA and Triple M and every workshop radio. At the plant, at the microphone, Richard Phillips, Executive Director of Manufacturing at Holden, speaks. Our last car was our best. Chairman Mark Bernhard cites in his statement to the Adelaide Advertiser the following day that 85% of the departing workforce has been successfully transitioning to new employment. He does not distinguish re-skilled trades from casual retail work. He does not name a single successor employer. 69 years, 10 months and 22 days since Ben Chifley pulled the first Holden off the line at Fisherman's Bend. 33 years, 4 months and 20 days since John Button announced the Motor Industry Development Plan. 44 years to the day since Stewart Underwood first walked through the Elizabeth Gate. The Lion is still on the boot. The engine is still a 6-litre V8. The plant that built it is closed, and the last car sits in a glass case at the National Motor Museum in Birdwood, 40 kilometres from Elizabeth. Chapter 11. 69 years. Walk into the National Motor Museum at Birdwood today. Turn left past the entrance. The Holden Heroes Retrospective. On the left, the 1948 Holden 48 215 No. 1, the car Ben Chifley launched at Fisherman's Bend. On the right, 40 metres away, the red-hot VF Series 2 Commodore SSV Redline, VIN ending 33542. Between the two cars, 69 years, 10 months and 22 days. Both wear the Rainer Hoff Lion from 1928. Both are Australian. Neither will have a successor. The Elizabeth plant, 40 kilometres away, has been sold to the Pelligra Group and is being redeveloped as Lionsgate Business Park. Stewart Underwood, 69 years old this year, the age of the industry he outlived, comes to the museum sometimes on a Saturday. Dave Deprez and Alex Kyriakopoulos have retired to their own gardens in Elizabeth. The 24,000 who worked the peak are scattered across South Australia in retirement homes, in AMWU pensions, in the suburban streets the Playford Housing Trust built. Lesson 1. Industrial policy is a one-way door. 18th of July, 1973. Guff. Whitlam cuts Australian tariffs by 25% overnight. 30th of May, 1984. John Button announces the passenger vehicle tariff will fall from 57.5% to 15% by 1992. 12th of March, 1991. Paul Keating extends the cuts to the year 2000. 10th of December 2013. Joe Hockey stands in the House of Representatives and dares Holden to leave. Every step reduces protection. No step increases it. Industrial policy is a one-way door, and Australia walked through it in 1984. Lesson 2. Patriotic debt is real. In 1940, Sir Essington Lewis was appointed Director General of Munitions. The framed motto on his wall read, "I am work." Every Australian car plant converted. Fisherman's Bend built Gypsy Major engines for the Tiger Moth. Lidcombe, in a factory run by General Motors Holden, built twin Wasp engines for the Beaufort. Woodville built Beaufort airframes and armoured cars. Ford Geelong built the V8s that powered the Bren gun carriers. Richards Adelaide built the wing panels for the Beaufort and the Wirraway. International Harvester Geelong assembled P-40E Kitty Hawks, 6 years of war production. Then a reconverted plant, and Ben Chifley in 1948 saying, "She's a beauty." The country that armed itself through its car plants in 1940 was by 2017 unable to build its own cars. The patriotic debt of 1942 was cancelled by a ministerial statement in 1984. It has not been repaid. It has been forgotten. Lesson 3. One man can do it. On the 30th of May, 1984, John Norman Button, Presbyterian minister's son from Ballarat, Ormond College law graduate, editor of the Geelong College school paper, stood at the Senate dispatch box and announced a plan. The plan was drafted by a committee. The plan was consulted with an industry. The plan was administered by an authority. But the plan was Button's. It carried his name. It reflected his judgment. It committed Australia to a path from which no successor government reversed course. 33 years later, at 10:45 a.m. on Friday the 20th of October 2017, the last VTF Series 2 Commodore SS5 Red Line rolled off the Elizabeth line, and one man's plan reached its terminal event. One senator, one ministerial statement, one industry gone. The Holden Lion is still on the boot of VIN 33542, 98 years after Rayner Hoff engraved the design. The Elizabeth plant is a business park. Ford Broadmeadows is a business park. Toyota Altona is a business park. Fisherman's Bend, the plant that pressed the Beaufort airframes, that unveiled the 48-215 to Ben Chifley, is a defence innovation precinct. The tooling is gone. The apprentices are gone. The suppliers are gone. Stewart Underwood, Dave de Pereth, Alex Kyriakopoulos, and the 24,000 who worked the peak are gone from the industry that made them. The badge survives. The country that built the badge no longer builds the cars. 69 years, 10 months and 22 days. The country that armed itself with cars in 1942 has in 2017 stopped making them. She's a beauty.